Welcome to a parallel project training APM Project Management qualification podcast based on the APM Body of Knowledge 6th edition. You should be using this in conjunction with our e-learning, study guide and potentially a tutor-led course. For more information, please visit www.parallelprojecttraining.com.
Hello, my name's Paul Neighbour and I'm with John Bolton doing some Parallel Project Training podcasts. Hello, John.
Hello, everybody.
So we're whizzing through the new APM
Project Management qualification syllabus and study guide.
And we're up to 3.6, 3.7, which is describe how environmental factors affect projects and explain the tools and techniques for assessing a project context. So we better explain what project context and or environment is, because these two words are used the same. So it's the business environment in which the project is executed, both internal business environment and external business environment.
It's not just business, though, is it? It's the overall environment. You use an example. If you were running a project to build a power station,
yes.
What sort of things would you worry about?
Price of the product that you're going to produce at the end. If you're going to get them, basically, because by the time you've built it, will you?
What sort of standards would you be following?
You just follow the industry standard, really, I expect.
Engineering standards, electrical standards, radiological standards, all that sort of stuff. Yes.
Yeah.
What sort of standards? If you would say now, forget that. What would you, if you were running a software project for a bank?
Yes.
What sort of standards would you be following?
Software standards for banking.
That's right, which are different.
Yes.
And the point I'm trying to make is that two projects could be very different, and the environment you find yourself in a bank is different from the environment yourself in. You know, if you got hard hat and welly boots on a site in Gloucestershire.
Yes, and also the culture.
That's right. The business culture, the money culture, the customer base, the drivers, they're all different.
Yes.
So the kind of a project manager would be working in a different environment or different context, depending on the nature of the business, the nature of the customer, the nature of the technology, the nature of the legal framework, and the economic context and all the rest of it. So that's kind of why it sounds like flipping obvious, really, but it's kind of why you need to understand what game you're in. I always say to people, if they're working on the railways, and you say, right, well, if I was to sort of transport you into a high-tech engineering, electronics company to run a project, what would be different?
Yes. And
a lot of things would be different.
Yes, a lot of things might be the same.
They might be a fantastic project manager in one and dribbling their soup in another, you know. So if you understand the environment you're in, you've got a better chance of succeeding, basically. And that's why this is in here.
Yes.
And they talk about a tool called Pestle, which a lot of people have come into contact with in other environments, really. Pestle's quite a common phrase, a common acronym.
Yes, for understanding the business environment or the context in which you're delivering the... And
it simply gives you a little list. And I mean, if you answer this question in the APM, describe the term project context and explain 5 elements of a project's context or something like that. They're looking for Pestle, is what they're looking for.
Yes.
And there's quite a lot of time devoted to it in the book.
Yeah, I think it's a must-do topic, really. I mean...
Yes, it's pretty
easy to understand. So Pestle stands for political, economic, sociological, technological, legal and environmental.
Correct.
So it's quite interesting because it goes environmental twice.
That's right.
So we'll come to that. So political, I think it's big P, little p. So it's both the politics in the organisation or the industry you work in, and also the general political context. So we all know about internal politics in organisations and how if you're delivering change, you need to recognise that internal politics. But also if your project's being driven by a political agenda, like building schools for the future or a major infrastructure investment, then the national politicians can have an influence on that.
Yes.
Because they set the policy for the country quite often. So if you don't understand whether your wind farms, for instance, sort of the weather vane of politics, or building a third runway at Heathrow. You know,
right.
that's hugely impacted by national politics.
And also, I mean, it can national politics, but also, you know, like Boris bikes and bike lanes in London.
Yes, that's right. Local politicians.
If someone gets elected instead of Boris, I mean, the emphasis from that might shift radically.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not saying it's their sort of pet projects, but they certainly have a sort of a predilection to one versus another.
Yes. And you must see the same in big corporations as well, where pet projects of senior people get sort of pushed forward, not because they're the best idea in the world, but because of who had the idea. You know?
Yeah,
so
that's right.
A sort of internal version of politics.
Really. Yeah, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. But that's political. I mean, economic is things like, you know, and a lot of this is how does it affect the project that you run?
Yes,
you know, because there's no point in just doing this as a semantic exercise. If you do the environment within which the project is working and you understand more about that, it'll make you more successful.
That's right. If you're in a booming sector, so one of our clients makes these nutrition bars, and it's booming. The market, they've grown so much, and that economic growth in that particular sector sets the whole context
that's right.
for the pressures they have on projects. Whereas if you're in a less booming environment, then you know, defence maybe.
Yes. Well,
then the expenditure's going down because it's
that's right.
There's
You've also got the costs of things, you know, like steel price or oil prices or things like that.
So I think you've got
exchange rates,
economics on inputs and outputs, on the benefits side and the cost side, and that makes a huge difference.
So an example of that is where, you know, say you're exporting your finished product, you're going to get paid in euros, but you're building it in pounds.
Yes.
You know, you're carrying the currency risk.
Yes.
So you might choose to try and hedge that, or you might get stage payments or something like that. It's going to affect the way you run the project. That's the important thing.
Yes, that's right.
And then you get sociological, which is all about demographics and where people
social
are. Social trends, populations, where it's all very well sort of, who have I got to talk to when I'm building a new railway? HS2. How big is the stakeholder group? Who's the, you know, who needs to be engaged in my project? How does it affect me in what I'm doing?
Yes, I think the best example of that is the extended age, the extended lifetime people have now. So people are living longer. So that puts all sorts of constraints, especially in the care sector, on those sort of projects, you know. So if you're building projects in the care sector, then that social trend of extended lifetimes puts a huge pressure on the way the projects, the demand for the project, the business case for the project, really. Well,
I think there's also examples of it. Things, you know, people use social media a lot more. So, you know, if you want to run a project, you can set up, you know, little social media group websites, and you can do project management without all the paraphernalia of project management, you know. So communication's easier, and all sorts of stuff.
Yes. So mobile. Then we've drifted into the next one, which is technology. I think that's the easiest to understand, actually, of these. Technical changes, so technology about how the project is delivered and what the product that we're going to deliver is.
Well, the problem you've got with technology is, if you think about it, most of the time, in a project, you've got to make or buy a decision. Do we buy it in or do we make it?
Yes.
And if you buy it in, the implication is you can't make it, either because you haven't got capacity or you haven't got the knowledge. If you haven't got the knowledge and you're buying in expertise, how are you going to manage those experts? Because you don't know what they're doing. And to me, that's a huge problem. And you hear the project managers with that all the time. How do I know they're telling me the truth? I've got all these contractors working for me, and they could tell me black is white, and I've got no way of knowing. So you have to develop a really good questioning technique and get to the bottom of those. Yes. So there's all that, and then there's also, you know, if you're doing a railway 10-year program, you know, what switching equipment are you going to put in? Because
it'd be obsolete
by the time you put it in.
Yes.
You know, I mean, there's I don't know, it's an urban myth, or the space shuttle had a 16 kb navigation computer.
Yes,
you know,
I'm sure it did.
because they knew it worked, and it was the one they developed, and of course, you know, got completely overtaken by technology, but it was too late. They designed that in, and that was the end of it.
Yes, that's right.
So I think there's that. That's technology. Legal is all about. We're going to talk a bit more about legal in the next section, actually. But legal context is, you know, things like health and safety, data protection, freedom of information.
What laws does this project have to comply with?
Yeah, and there's big environmental laws. You know, you can't, you know, contaminated land or disposal of contaminated product you might have been using to build it.
That's quite interesting, actually, because that then moves on to environmental So I think environmental is not just compliance with the legal requirements for environmental, but it's doing the right thing.
Yes, it's social responsibility.
Social responsibility, reusing, recycling, reducing wherever possible, and having that in mind in the way you challenge the project, design the project,
That's right.
Minimising waste and all those sorts of things. So that's Pestle. So I think it's a really useful, especially in the business case end of a project, really, to understand why, what's the environment in which this project, what's the environment in which I'm going to deliver this project? Is there anything out there in the business environment that might change the way I want to do this project? They drive risks as well, a lot of these. I mean, a lot of these topics actually join up when you come to
They do.
The risk drivers.
They do. I would argue that Pestle is a risk identification technique.
It is a very
For
good
the purpose of the exam, it's not.
No.
Please note.
But in real life, it's
in real
very
life
useful.
it is,
It's a real useful way of thinking about the risks and the risks to the benefits as well. I think a lot of these things, we've all about the white elephant project. It gets built and never used.
I mean, there are other environmental factors, things like the organisation and the way it's structured, and things like procurement rules and regulations and stuff like that, and whether there's any structured methods that they have. I mean, you could probably argue that these fit into some of the other categories like PESTLE if you want, but they're just examples of some of those. But I'm not sure they're particularly suited to any of them. But
yes.
And they also talk about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
There's another way of understanding
the
environment in which you're working.
Yeah, that's right.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Good.
No worries.
Thank you, John.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast and found it informative. To order a study guide, e-learning, or a tutor-led course to go with this podcast, please visit www.parallelprojecttraining.com.